tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Blessings, good evening. The cold weather is upon us, so more coughs and sniffles around in the world, or at least in this part of the world. Also means that it's closer to the time of the Vasa, the range retreat, the monastic retreat, where the Sangha spend the next 3 months practicing meditation, studying the rules of discipline, learning chanting in perhaps a slightly more continuous way, because Buddhist monks, they undertake to stay the range retreat in just one place. So it means less travel, and the number of other activities other than the practice of meditation, training, tends to be reduced. Coincides with the cold weather, so maybe it's a good time to meditate more, listen to the Dhamma and practice mindfulness more, because other activities are a bit harder with the cold weather. In the time of the Buddha, there was one range retreat, if I remember, when the monks were sewing robes for the Buddha. In those days they would sew by hand. No Singer sewing machines 2,500 years ago. They would sew by hand. And they'd help each other, because to sew a set of robes just for one monk requires a lot of effort, time, skill. So the monks would help each other. And one monk asked, why are we doing this? And the other monk said, well, because after the retreat, the Buddha will go wandering. And we want to offer a new set of robes so that he has what he needs to go travelling. Later the Buddha heard this, and he asked the monks, well, when I go wandering, I won't be living here as your teacher. How will you practice? And one of the monks answered that he would dwell in recollecting the Buddha as an object of mind, as a meditation, you might say. He'll dwell recollecting the Buddha, recollecting the Dhamma, recollecting the Sangha. Just as we've chanted this evening in Pali, we chant the qualities, recollecting the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. It brings us to remember these qualities, particularly the great purity of mind, peace of mind, wisdom, compassion of the Buddha, the qualities of the Dhamma, such as Dhamma is timeless, encouraging investigation, qualities of the Sangha, the Arya Sangha, those who have realized the path, you've kept to the straight and direct path for the end of suffering, following the Buddha's instructions. All three of these are very powerful recollections that when you keep in mind, keep you focused on the whole purpose of our practice as Buddhists, following the Buddha, aiming to free ourselves from stress, suffering, aiming for Nibbana. So they call these recollections the dwelling places of the mind. It means even if the Buddha isn't with you, you can dwell recollecting or remembering the Buddha and the qualities of the Buddha. And the Buddha pointed out when we're not dwelling in such wholesome recollections, what happens? Our mind tends to stray from the path. We're not mindful, we're not reflective, not fully aware, not alert, careful. You notice this happens all the time, doesn't it? We spend a lot of our time daydreaming or getting caught into our moods, our mind going here and there, depending on the different stimulus and how what we call the mental defilements take our mind away. It's constantly following defilements rooted in greed, anger, delusion, craving, attachment. That's their job, their duty. So the nature of defilement is to take the mind away from the present moment, send it on a little journey somewhere, thinking about what we like, what we don't like, and putting us into moods and putting us off guard. And the Buddha said the opposite of that is when you're mindful and when you're heedful, it's like you're on guard, you're alert, you're careful to watch over your mind. But when the mental defilements come up, and when they're triggered or stimulated and they take over the mind, then we become careless. And we drift away, lost in our moods, and the mind becomes agitated, caught into suffering of different kinds. We become less happy, less peaceful. And that's something we've got to look at and learn about for ourselves from our own experience. And we can hear the words of the Buddha or read them, but you've got to get to know your own mind. Which is why the Buddha said, practice heedfulness. Pay attention, be alert, and reflect. Develop discernment, wisdom, to see what's going on. Whenever a particular mental defilement takes over the mind, comes into the mind, it's always agitating. It's just the way they are, that's what they do. But if you're alert, then there's a chance to maintain some mindfulness and understanding. Stop that happening. So they say when you're mindful, alert, and your intelligence, your discernment is functioning well, that's like the time when you're really alive. When you become heedless and your mind drifts off into moods and gets lost into different negative emotions, then it's like the mind has gone to sleep or even it's died temporarily. Ajahn Kalyano used to say, if you're not mindful for 5 minutes, it's like you're dying, or you've died for 5 minutes. Because in those 5 minutes, if your mind is wandering around, lost in its moods, then it means that you can't really know anything as Dhamma with true mindfulness and understanding. You may think you know because you can still remember and you're aware that you're thinking, but there's not much clarity. You're not able to see the true or unconditioned nature of the mind. Just lost in the condition, the mood, the thought, the feeling. And it leads us on to feel more agitated and stressed, and maybe do things that cause more stress, more agitation. So the Buddha was always encouraging the monks, the nuns, the lay practitioners to be heedful, be alert, be mindful. Not so much because of external dangers, although sometimes in life that plays a role. We have to be careful about things going on around us in the world. But more importantly, just because our own mind keeps wandering out of the present moment, following greed, anger, delusion, confusion, worry, anxiety, fear, jealousy, laziness, stubbornness, all the different defilements that we know about, we keep getting lost in them over and over again. You notice that when you meditate. You're mindful for a little while and then your mind wanders off into another train of thought, another mood. And it can take ages before you realize what's happened. In that period where you lost your mindfulness, lost your alertness, it's like the mind is gone dead. Mostly in life we know about the death of the physical body. Nobody wants that. We all want to live forever. We want to be strong, healthy. Everybody fears death. But nobody fears the death of the mind. So we keep getting lost into distraction, worry, desires of different kinds. And we develop the world, we develop technology and lifestyle to support that even. Many people, their idea of happiness is, well, if I have enough technology that I don't have to face any kind of painful feeling or difficulty or discomfort, I never have to feel bored, then I'm succeeded in my life. That's why phones and computers are so addictive to people, because they fulfill that largely. If you've got internet access in one way or another, then you can do so many things that you never have to feel bored, or not very often. And you can always distract yourself from the present moment, from whatever you're feeling or thinking. But if we're not careful, it exaggerates our moods, increases our mental agitation, increases the actions of the defilements. We get more lost, and you might say it's like the technology makes us more dead mentally. So there's a danger there. Technology can be useful, but it also has its drawbacks that we have to consider, be careful about. But it all stems back to the mind, doesn't it? When you're mindful, you can use a tool or technology to help you do things, get information, communicate with people, learn things, achieve more in life. But when we're not mindful, then it tends to stimulate the defilements. And that's the challenge. Whether you have technology around you or not, you'll see your mind is constantly craving distraction of one kind or another. So the Buddha said, keep watching, keep learning from that. Keep coming back to your mind, developing this quality of the knowing, where you're mindful, alert, and reflective, discerning what's going on. And you'll see, well, most of our moods and actions they begin as feelings. We're always trying to get away from unpleasant feeling and get more pleasant feeling. Constantly looking for things that will make us feel comfortable, more interested and excited, more stimulated, and more pleasure. And trying to get away from anything that's at all painful or encourages us to feel dull, bored. We all see that in a negative light. You notice as you meditate, that's going on all the time, isn't it? Trying to get away from painful feelings in the body, in your muscles, in different aspects of your body, or feelings of tiredness, and in trying to find things that bring up pleasure. As you practice the Dhamma, well, one thing you gain is the skill. You learn how to uplift your mind, even if physically you are feeling tired or feel pain or discomfort. We can use the Dhamma that we develop, the practice of the Dhamma, to help uplift the mind to deal with this fact that we always run away from pain and try to get more pleasure and attach to pleasure. The Dhamma is a very kind of subtle but pure way of uplifting the mind. And the real Dhamma doesn't really have any disadvantages or doesn't lead on to agitation and suffering in the way the defilements do. So I say that's why the Buddha encouraged us to recollect or remember, keep in mind the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, because it uplifts the mind, brings a wholesome state of mind that can bring with it energy. So sometimes remembering the Buddha wakes you up, literally, not just wakes your mind up, bringing you mindfulness, but wakes you up from a state of sleepiness. Remembering the Dhamma, remembering the Sangha. Brings joy. When you recollect the Buddha, the fact that you have come in contact with the Buddha's teachings, there has been a Buddha in the world, these teachings are still available to us. Just thinking about that can bring great joy. It's a very positive emotion. Brings up rapture, piti, happiness, sukha, tranquility, passaddhi, all these different spiritual qualities that support the mind feeling more content, happy in itself. And when you meditate, it helps your mind to settle down, concentrate easily, because you feel well, you feel good. As you cultivate mindfulness and insight as well, doesn't mean to say your mind becomes kind of bland, lifeless. There is joy that comes from the practice, the happiness of the practice, but it's a happiness that's not so addictive because it's coming from a more pure place and it's combined with insight, so you know it's coming from the Dhamma, seeing the truth, seeing the Dhamma. It's just a natural result of freeing your mind from mental defilements. There's the freedom of defilement from samadhi, when the hindrances are quiet. We're not seeking any particular sense object. We're not lost in irritation or boredom. We're not sleepy, not restless or anxious. The mind is content to develop an object. And then there's that happiness, well-being, the joy that comes from insight. Understanding the way things are and brings with it a certain release. If you see the impermanent nature of the things you chase to get pleasure, then your mind starts to tire of that. There's the happiness of release. Oh, I don't need to chase after those pleasures after all, because they're only temporary. And the happiness that comes from practicing the Dhamma, it leads to inner contentment, inner satisfaction. It's not dependent on having a lot of things. Whether you have a lot of money or property, friends, or you have fame and fortune, or the worldly success that people normally crave. You don't need any of that from the Dhamma. The Dhamma is above that, beyond that. You may have those things. You may have material success, fame and fortune, but you don't absolutely need it to practice the Dhamma or experience the happiness of the Dhamma. When you're peaceful, say in your meditation, if you're truly peaceful, it doesn't matter if anyone else knows about it or not. You don't need to go out and tell everyone. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need any special equipment or things to help you. It comes from your own inner development of the mind, developing sila, morality, samadhi, concentration, panya, insight, discernment. You bring your mind to the Dhamma, then it's happy without having to depend on external things. This is why the Buddha encouraged us, dwell in recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. It brings happiness, uplifts your mind, brings you energy, and it brings you ability to separate your mind from painful feelings of tiredness which normally drag us down. And when you have painful feelings as you meditate, the main problem is what you think about them, the suffering. Oh, I don't like this painful leg or back, or this feeling of tiredness. It agitates the mind when you attach to it, when you identify with it as yours, mine, as a person. When you cultivate the Dhamma with mindfulness, insight, you just look at it. Oh, there's a painful feeling there, but you don't have to react with suffering. Separate your mind from it. Oh, it feels like this. But it's not a person or a being. It's just one phenomena in nature that arises and passes away. When your mind is stronger, say when you recollect the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, you can do that. Then even if you have some discomfort, you're ill, or you have some pain in your leg, or you feel tired from working, you just know these things for what they are. They're just feelings. Or if you have some suffering coming your way, somebody else treats you badly, things don't go your way, you can just know those experiences are just what they are. The words of another person, the ups and downs of your life, your job, your family life. You don't have to react with suffering, you just know them for what they are. Oh, it's like that. When somebody is kind and praises you or speaks nicely to you, it feels one way. When somebody's upset, scolds you, angry, criticizes you, it feels another way. But when you're mindful, they're of equal value, aren't they? It's just another sound, another set of words. You understand the meaning, but you don't have to suffer with it. You don't have to create suffering in the mind. Just know them for what they are with mindfulness. When the mind dies from mindfulness, gets lost in its moods, well, whatever we hear from other people sets us off, doesn't it? When they're friendly, we're happy, we like that, we attach to that. When they're unkind, rude, critical, we don't like that. The mind's constantly going up and down, pushed around by the external conditions. When we get what we want, we're happy. When we don't get what we want, we're unhappy. Things go our way, we're happy. Walk down the road, very happy. When things don't go our way, we're unhappy. And in one day, that can change so many times. So the Buddha said, keep mindful, stay on guard, keep alert, and contemplate. It's not certain, is it? All these external conditions, they come and go. The internal conditions, how your body feels, arises, passes away, changes. The external conditions change as well. And often you can't control them. Someone comes your way and they're talking in a way you don't like, don't agree with, or they're being rude. You may be able to walk away from them, maybe not. Maybe you're stuck in an elevator with them, or stuck in a car with them, or stuck somewhere with them in that room. You just have to put up with it, don't you? But if you use mindfulness, maybe you can uplift your mind at that time. Maybe just reflect on the Buddha. Say they're being rude to you, or they're talking down to you because they're upset or annoyed or arrogant. Just think of the Buddha. How would the Buddha behave right now? Would the Buddha get upset? No, the Buddha didn't get upset. When people were talking down to the Buddha contemplated, maintained his mindfulness, his alertness, and let go. Let go of the suffering. When the Buddha felt tired, he let go. When the Buddha encountered hardships and difficulties, he let go. Because he practiced mindfulness, he was alert, careful, heedful. He didn't let his mind die from the Dhamma, from the present moment, falling into moods. He maintained his mindfulness and contemplated, these conditions are like this. Sometimes you use the reflection on karma, or this is old karma coming back. You have to be very strong and patient with it. Sometimes it's new karma. You've made it yourself. Sometimes the problem is not other people, it's ourselves, isn't it? We create our own suffering through our own thinking process, attaching to it, falling into different moods through carelessness. Suddenly we're unhappy, we're jealous, we're annoyed, we're full of self-criticism. We have to accept, this is my karma. Maybe it's something you've seen before, and you have to be very patient and then teach yourself. Don't do that. You notice when you're patient, then that gives you time to think things through, or consider what's going on. And maybe you do feel unhappy, uncomfortable in yourself, feel awkward, feel disappointed, depressed. Maybe it's because of your own memories coming up, or maybe there's something external to do with another person, or something going on around you. But if you're patient, it gives you a little bit of space, doesn't it, to establish some mindfulness, to look, to learn, and then to let go of whatever it is that you're clinging on to. Clinging on to that reaction, that mood, just let it go. And you've got two choices, haven't you? When defilements come up, either you feed them, keep them there in your mind, hold on to them, keep them there, keep thinking it over and over again, or you let it go. With mindfulness you say, let this go, this is suffering. If you want to give up the craving, the attachment that leads you to suffer, then you have to stop feeding it, stop holding on to that way of thinking. Like Ajahn Chah said, if you have a stray cat come to your kitchen, if you keep feeding it, it'll keep coming back. If you stop feeding it, it may be hard. You have to be quite firm with yourself. You hear the cat, meowing, wanting attention, wanting food. But if you're firm, you don't feed it, well, after a while it won't come back. Craving is like that. We're so used to it, reacting with our own old habits, complaining, unhappy, grumpy, or desiring things, always wanting something more. We're so used to that that we just follow it out of habit. The way of the Dhamma is just saying, no, I'm not going to follow that habit. And you need to be on guard to do that, to be alert, mindful, and to recognize defilements are defiling in their nature. They're impermanent, and they don't lead to peace of mind, they don't lead to happiness. So don't follow them, don't hold on to them, don't give in to them. In Buddhism we call that wisdom, discernment, wisdom, insight, that won't follow a defilement because it recognizes, if I follow this I'll suffer more. Quite often that means you have to be firm with yourself, you have to be clear, and you have to say no to certain ways of thinking, certain reactions or emotions that have come up. You may not be able to stop them coming up into your mind, but it's what you do next, isn't it? Whether you say, oh no, this is not the right way to think, I'm not going to hold on to this. Or you just go with it and feed the cat longer, and then you end up suffering again for longer maybe. So patience helps. Patience when you're faced with difficulties. When your body gives you grief, pain, when other people give you pain and problems, when the world around you is giving you problems, you have to be patient and then contemplate. Do I want to follow the way of the defilements? When I get caught into my worries, anxiety, my anger, in more selfish desires, or do I want to stay with the Dhamma? That takes practice. With patience, then you can get success step by step. If you keep practicing, little by little, you gain more self-control. You can let go of defilements more easily, more quickly, and you have more peace of mind. So I'll leave you with those reflections tonight, and wish you all well.